Thanks for joining me again for another How to Draw Stuff with me, Calvin Innes. Okay, so today's video comes from a request I got from a school a few weeks back, and this is how to draw a simple cityscape. Now, for the drawing today, you're going to need two different pens. You're going to need a fine line pen, or a pencil will be absolutely fine, and you're going to need a chisel tip marker, or a pen with a slightly thicker nib. The idea is so you have two completely different sizes of pen. Ideally, slightly different colours as well would be perfect. If you can't find different colours, don't worry about it. Whatever you've got will be fine. So grab your pens, grab your sketchbook, and let's get started.
Okay, so we are going to work on drawing a simple cityscape. For this, we're going to need this marker pen and this fine line pen. Now, the idea of these two pens is we have a fine line, and we also have the option to go for a much thicker mark with here. So we've got the chisel tip. You don't have to use exactly the same pens as these, but it's a good idea to have two different thicknesses. Now, when you're drawing your cityscape, it's important to look at the city in its most simple sort of form. The thing is, when you're drawing a city, it's quite easy to look at all of the buildings as being these really complicated things, but essentially they're just boxes. Boxes and boxes with more little squares for windows, the occasional triangle, a few little lines here and there, but essentially just a chunk of boxes. So to begin with, for our city, we're going to draw exactly that. We're going to draw some boxes. Now, these boxes are going to be different sizes, slightly different shapes. Again, keeping this nice and rough to begin with. Not really planning this out too much to begin with. Just nice, different sized. And we'll go for look for a longer one here. There we go. Next thing we want to do is start adding boxes to these boxes. So they're not all perfectly square shape. We'll have a little piece up there. Let's go for something up there. Something there. Maybe kind of a big, long, thin piece there. We'll also add a couple of bits in here. Let's maybe join those a little bit higher up. Draw another box. We'll put another box in here. Let's have another one over here. Again, there's no real rhyme or reason to this. It's just making sure there's a little bit of balance. Kind of just making it up as you go along. Just adding more boxes after boxes after boxes. Now, as I've said in a few of my other tutorial videos, a lot of the mistakes people make when they first start drawing is to try and draw the complicated things that are going on first of all, without looking at the most simple way of doing them first. If you start off simple and then add in the detail, and then sort of start getting complicated, you're going to find it so much easier. If you go straight in and start trying to draw all these little details, windows and kind of cables and cars and roads, that kind of stuff, it gets really tricky. By doing it this way, you're starting off with very, very simple shapes, starting to layer them up, you make your life a lot easier. There we go. Going to keep on building a few more of these boxes in. Now I'm going to start adding in some areas on here. So these could be kind of windows or billboards, I suppose. Some of these buildings might have shape kind of jutting out from them. Some of them might have these ledges and longer, thinner boxes. Again, just adding in smaller boxes here. There's more and more of these in. Just constantly building up the layers. Still no real detail in here. We're going to start putting in some just horizontal lines using this nice thick chisel tip marker. This is just to pick out ledges, pick out details. Let's start adding a few little kind of horizontal lines on some of the buildings here. Now, most of the time when you look at most modern cities, there's a lot of horizontal lines, there's a lot of vertical lines. Then you have all the other bits as well, but by getting in these first of all, you start to see this sort of cityscape coming out of the page. Now this isn't based on any sort of real city. I'm not copying off any reference picture here. I'm literally just making this up as I go along. Okay, let's keep going with this. Just adding in these horizontal lines. Let's start doing the same with some vertical lines as well. Let's try a few areas of interest. Kind of suggest where there might be some windows. Again, just all using this chisel tip marker. In a little while, once we've added some more detail in here, we'll get in with the other pen, but we don't need to go there just yet. Okay, we can add some masts. Sort of, a lot of times at the top of sort of skyscrapers and things, you'll get these sort of aerials and poles sticking up. Same as around here, you've got all around here, you've got all these kind of telegraph poles or radio poles, that kind of stuff. Some of these literally just dabbing on the width of the pen, barely even drawing. It's literally just dabbing on a shape. And the pen does it for you. That's the beauty of these chisel tip markers. It's great for doing this kind of stuff when you first start drawing, because it gives you kind of quite a lot of pen control. Yeah, just layering in these. Don't worry about doing these overlapping layers. That's what you want. You don't want just a solid building here, then a solid building here, then a solid building next to it. You want these buildings to be overlapping each other. You want these shapes to kind of run into each other, because that's how cities work. As you're looking at a cityscape, you can see bits of buildings peeking through from behind other bits of buildings. They're not just all in a perfectly neat row. Okay. We can keep going forever with this. Let's add in a few more little ones at the back there. I want to get a few bigger ones in to kind of really break up this shape. It's all just boxes to begin with, and then this is all just simple lines. Just overlapping again and again. Yeah, going to one of these boxes, going over again, a little bit darker. You know, I'll pick out a few areas where I want to make a little bit darker, and it's literally just going over them again. Again, that's kind of the beauty of these markers, is you can, to a certain extent, you can build up the layers. Don't want to overwork it so you're kind of ripping through the paper, but you can go over it a couple of times, that's no problem. Okay, now we've got our basic squares, got our basic lines. We're going to just throw in a few kind of curved lines to sort of break this up. So from up here, sweeping down, not worrying too much about where it's going to. Just going to have a cable running up there. From up here, I'm going to go again. In fact, I'm going to go for 2 up there. I'm going to keep these nice and quick. Go for another one up here. I also kind of want to suggest a few more kind of recognizable shapes in here. So behind here, let's go for a vertical line there, a vertical line there, a vertical line there, and behind this building, bring in the curves. So we've got something that resembles a bridge. Let's draw in some. Again, we're just turning this chisel tip marker over onto the point. So we're using this little bit right here. You can, if you want to, use the other end of this. This is a double-ended marker. But using the chisel tip marker is actually kind of the way I normally work. It's just a little bit quicker. Saves kind of messing about with all the pen caps. Okay, got a bridge sort of suggested in the background. Again, using this really fine edge. Gonna add in a few more details. Just gonna cross-hatch some buildings in there. Let's get another cable. Also want kind of something going down there. It's a little bit unbalanced at the moment, so let's just bring in another building up here, nice and rough. I think up here we're going to go for some sort of circular shape up there, just to break it up a little bit. Because the thing is about cityscapes, they're not all squares. The vast majority of them is these straight lines in these boxes. But now we've got to this stage, you can start adding in a few additional shapes. So you might have kind of a dome on top of a building. Let's have a look over here. You might have something a little bit more ornate, kind of a church or a mosque or that kind of thing. This, I imagine, is some sort of revolving restaurant, that kind of thing up in the sky. Okay, now you've got these basic shapes. We can then go in with our finer pen and start picking out a few additional details. So, in here, we're going to just start picking out some of these details very roughly. The windows, we're going to put in some steps. Again, this is all just, almost all horizontal and vertical lines. Just picking out some of these details. Just building up these areas of interest. You don't want to pick out every single line. You don't want every single piece highlighted. You're picking out where your focal point is really. So your focal point might be everything in the foreground. In this case, I'm doing most of the stuff sort of in the mid-ground. So some of this stuff right near the front is going to be a bit more blurry, so it's not going to have as much detail in. So I might just suggest a few windows there. This building in the center is kind of my focal point. That's what I want people to look at in the illustration really. So this is where I'll bring the most detail into it. Going to start putting in street signs. Get some more windows in there. This is all very rough and sketchy at the moment. But that's kind of what I want. You can take a little bit more time over some of this, and go for neater lines if you want to. But this sort of almost chaotic looking city I always find is a kind of a nicer thing to draw, especially if you're drawing backgrounds for comics, that sort of thing. If you're not wanting to distract from your main characters, from your main focal point, then this sort of style works pretty nicely. Again, we're just building up all these horizontal and vertical lines. So another set of steps coming around there. Go down at the top. Add in additional details on these sort of radio antenna and signal masts and that kind of stuff. Same with kind of little signs coming out from the building. Get some extra details on there. Again, this is all just about building up the layers as you go, adding in little areas of detail, not worrying about making things perfect. And that's kind of key all the way through this. You don't need perfectly straight lines. You don't need absolutely the neatest drawing ever, the most realistic drawing ever. It's about just building up these layers, adding in areas of detail as you go. We can keep that nice and rough as it sort of fades out to the edge. We don't want to highlight any of the, we don't want to pick out any of the bridge, because that's kind of off in the distance. Let's get those couple more cables in there. Maybe got a bit of a focal point over there. Again, bring those cables in. Could even add some little extra lights along that cable as we go. Let's start looking at a few little details down the front here, where we're going to get in some little street lights. Again, these are super simple shapes. Not worrying about making them perfect at all. Now, some of these areas where there's down sort of alleyways and in behind houses, behind these buildings, I'm just cross-hatching in, sort of shading in a few areas where it's going to be a little bit darker, and that'll just make these other buildings pop out a little bit more. Stop it all looking quite so one-dimensional. Okay, we're going to keep this nice and simple again. As we're going out towards the edge, we're kind of losing some of the detail. I don't want to get into too much over here. I want this to be the focal point. So again, on this side, as we get further away from the centre, I'm getting a little bit rougher. Not worrying about getting the detail in quite so much. Start bringing a few bits of this down. So we've got a bit of a shadow down on the street down here. Again, just adding in a few signs. Let's scribbling. So not too much detail at all here. Look, you're just scribbling in the suggestion of a few people walking. These are very simple little shapes. Just don't want detail in there at all. But we've got these little people walking around on the streets. We could even put in it's just very roughly shading a car there. It's not much more than a scribble. You might have kind of bins and things down alleyways, people walking. And then there we go. Got a nice little advertisement on the building there. And we're almost done on this. Just going to add in a few other little bits of detail. And again, you're just adding in vertical, horizontal lines, building up these shapes. You're suggesting the shapes of buildings. You're suggesting the shapes of windows. You're suggesting the shapes of people. None of this stuff is particularly realistic. So if you take one section on its own, just look at here, those windows are off center, they're not perfectly square, they're kind of a bit all over the place. But as a whole, it works. Because you're used to seeing cities, you know what buildings look like. Your eye fills in a lot of the detail for you. So if you suggest what these buildings kind of look like, with these rough blocks, with these rough shapes, with a lot of these kind of vertical and horizontal lines, then your eye sort of does the rest of adds in all the rest of the detail for you. Okay, so we're going to leave that there for today. And that is your simple cityscape using a chisel tip marker and a fine line pen. Starting off with simple box shapes, layering them up, adding box on top of box using horizontal and vertical lines, and then going in with the fine line to add in little bits of detail. Again, horizontal, vertical lines. Have a few of these kind of sweeping lines just to break it up. Don't overdo it on those. And there you go. And the key is just to practice, practice, practice. So thank you for joining me. I hope you've enjoyed the video. Remember, hit like on the video if you found this useful. Leave me any comments underneath. I'd love to hear what you think. Remember to share the channel, subscribe, and I will see you next time.